Shannon, can you see Jerry Jones firing McCarthy?
I really can't, Skip, because this is a guy that Jerry Jones wanted 2 years ago. He wanted him so much, he let him stay in his house overnight. They had beer and nachos. And Jerry Jr., Jerry's son, said, Dad, what are you waiting on? Go ahead and sign him. He's everything that you want in a head coach. And he ended up becoming Jerry's head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Skip, I don't see why you would fire Mike McCarthy because he went 6-10 last year. You didn't make the playoffs. You go 12-5 this year. You win a division. You have a home field. And so why are you firing him? And he's the type of guy that Jerry wants as a head coach, Skip. He won't fight Jerry on any issues. He won't push back. Remember, Skip, Mike McCarthy replaced the guy that you wanted fired probably 2 years into his tenure. And he kept him as the head coach for 9.5 years. Just 3 weeks ago, Skip, and I got this quote. 3 weeks ago, after hanging 56 on Washington, Jerry saying of Mike McCarthy, he's a difference maker, and that needs to be recognized. That's what he said 3 weeks ago. Why would you fire a guy, Skip, when what transpired Sunday had been transpiring all year? Skip, they are the most penalized team as far as penalties per game. They were 1 yard short of being the most penalized yard team, so having both. Skip, they didn't play well. They played down the so if you play somebody that's not good, you hang 56, you hang 51, everybody's yelling and screaming. But when they stepped up in competition, they lost the games. Remember, you never accept anything in a win, you wasn't in a loss. When you was getting all these penalties and you were winning, I never heard anybody mention a thing. When he was making these blunders with clock management, this started in week 2, Skip. Oh, it's okay. They're going to clean that up. They got so many weeks to clean this up. Now, all the things that had been happening in the regular season came to a head in the playoff. Now you get bounced. Now you want to fire Mike McCarthy when this has been a reoccurring theme all season. They didn't just become the most penalized playoff team. That was their body of work for the entire 18-week season. This was who they are. Skip, we talked about Dak. He got upset. Oh, you say slump. That's not what I'm saying. Oh, you say this. That's not what we're saying. You don't know what these guys doing in the locker room, yada, yada, yada. Lo and behold, you get to the game on Sunday, and every single issue that you've had for the entire season presented itself to you in the playoff game, and you got bounced. So to make a long story short, and unfortunately I made a short story long, Mike McCarthy will be your head coach next year. And you will be in the same position again, saying, get rid of Mike McCarthy. He's the bane of your existence. And unfortunately, you and I do not have any say or control of the Cowboys. One Gerald Wayne Jones does, and Mike McCarthy will be back next year.
Shannon Sharpe. First of all, I'm here to tell you that this is wishful thinking on your part because you want with all your heart and soul for Mike McCarthy to be back with my Cowboys because you just laid out the case. My Cowboys will almost certainly be doomed next year again if Mike McCarthy is back as their game manager, clock manager. You know it, and I know it. So I disqualify, and I ask all of our viewers out there with half a brain to disqualify everything you just said because you're saying it from the ultimate Cowboy hater point of view. You want Mike to remain because you know Mike will be the bane of my existence next year and then the next year and the next and however long Jerry clings to him. Okay, now it's my turn.
You wanted him hired. You wanted him hired.
I blessed it because
hire him.
Oh, okay, well, who wouldn't bless it after all those years of 8-8 Jason Garrett? 8-8, 8-8, 8-8, 8-8, 8-8. I was 8-8 up. It ate me up to go 8-8 every year because he was not a CEO. He was not a commanding leader. I think he's a pretty good offensive coordinator. I know he crapped out in New York because they were a crappy team, but still, correct. Jason Garrett was not cut out to be that dominating, locker room inspiring head coach. He just never was. He's a nice guy. I covered him. I like him. I get it. It was time for him to go after 2 years, to your point. And I just had to live and let live and live and let live, and it just drove me crazy. And I thought, Mike McCarthy's a made man. He's got a Super Bowl ring from long ago in a galaxy far away, and now I agree with you. It was thanks mostly to Aaron Bleepin Rodgers. Okay, now, back to me. It is now my turn after your long story short, story long. I tried to contain myself yesterday. I did not want to unleash on this because I am lifelong, diehard Dallas Cowboy true blue fan to the core. And I was irrational yesterday. I was out of my mind yesterday, and I tried to exercise what I call my 24-hour rule. I like to sleep on it one night, let everything settle, and then if I still believe what I think I believe, then I plunge, I unleash. And I am unleashing today. Mike McCarthy has to go. It is clear as day. He is the reason that team woefully underachieved and lost to a team they should have beaten at home on Sunday. Okay, so now back to the question. Do I think there's any way that Jerry Jones will fire Mike McCarthy? I am going to go, for me, this is huge. I'm going to give it a 25% chance when usually I would give it a 0% chance. Why do I believe that? Because of what Jerry said after the game. Jerry Jones, after that game, and trust me, I have known him since from day one. I know him inside and out. As I keep telling you, I wrote 3 books on the Cowboys. I spent literally hundreds of hours with Jerry Jones. That was the most measured postgame, the most rational, objective postgame comments from Jerry I have ever heard. He was steamed to his core. When he was asked, when was the last time you were this disappointed? He said, I can't remember when. Why was that, Shannon? Because he had laid it out all week. This is our chance. Our window is probably starting to close, but this is our chance because the injury god said, let there be Cowboys this year. They were about as injury-free as you could hope to be at this point in time. That's a talented football team with a quarterback that he caved in and paid $75 million to just for this season. So he went ahead and said, okay, there's the leader of my franchise. That's the big game quarterback who's played at a very high level in his previous 3 playoff games, even though he'd lost 2 out of 3. He was not the reason they lost. And Jerry is thinking to himself, this is my time. And Jerry, as often as you point out, talked about his mortality on this earth. He is 79. He will turn 80 years of age next football season, October 13th. You don't think that's starting to eat at him? You don't think he's starting to think that maybe his window is starting to close on this planet?
Yeah, of
because
course.
I believe it, knowing Jerry the way I know him. Go ahead.
Skip, but what did he say last week? When they asked him, was it Super Bowl or bust? What did he say? He said, absolutely. So he understands that this thing, the window doesn't open, it closes. And he had as greater opportunity this year as he's ever had. As you mentioned, everybody was healthy. His receiving core was healthy. His offensive line, he got Ty Smith back. His quarterback was healthy. They had just hung, 50-something points on the Eagles. Defense was healthy. So everything lined up perfectly. But, Skip, this is who you've been all season long. You know it.
Okay, I got it. That's my point. You're actually making my case for me. Because I watched this team get off to a hot start. And again, I gave you the field in the division because I didn't think anybody was even in Dallas's class. That doesn't mean that Dallas is great. That just means the rest of the division is a bunch of garbage. I do think Philly was a threat, and I think they turned into a decent team at the end of the year. But Washington was not a decent team, and obviously the Giants were all-time pathetic, and they're starting over yet again. They've had 2-year coach, 2-year coach, 2-year coach, and now they're starting over again. They don't have a quarterback. Washington doesn't have a quarterback. You don't think Philly has a quarterback. So if you want to go, we won the division by default. We did. I'll give that up to you. They also won me 10 cases of Diet Dew, thanks to you. Thank you very much for that. But the point is, in the biggest picture, when I least expected it, they did not show up for a game against your Denver Broncos. 30-0 going to the fourth quarter is just flat out wrong. If you're that team that's going to make that run and you're that late in the season and you fall down 30-0 to a mediocre Denver team, that's just wrong. I'm sorry. That's where I first said the bell was going off in the back of my brain. The red flag was flying. And I said, God. And I tried to sweep it under my carpet, and I couldn't because then Thanksgiving happened. And I've told you before, that game took 5 years off my life because we're just better than that Raider team. This is Thanksgiving at Jerry World. This should be your stage, your game to make a Super Bowl statement. And you know what happened. They lost in overtime to the Raiders. And I know the Raiders made the playoffs, but you know and I know it was just disastrous. And then you know and I know Arizona was stumbling, tumbling toward the finish line. We saw what happened last night. I know. I got it. I got it. You can just dismiss them. And they rocked us, and we fought back. What Dak does best is he gets hopelessly behind, and he goes warrior, and he battles back, and it's always too little too late. And he did it again against Arizona, and it came down to a call on fumble, not fumble, and you say, oh, and here we go again. And we lost. That's all I know is we lost. And we're going to break down that last play of the San Francisco game the other day, but we lost. And we should have had a shot to steal the game, but we lost. And Mike McCarthy, in those 4 games in question, did not have my team ready to play football. It's as simple as that. He is simply, in all my years, and I've been doing this for a lot longer than you played, I have never in my life seen a more uninspiring motivator than Mike McCarthy, and I got to see it, unfortunately, way too up close and way too personal in Hard Knocks. I got to see him address the team in the meeting room and then in the locker room before preseason games, and I was ashamed for him because it is not his forte. So I'm asking Shannon, what does he do? He doesn't call the plays. No. He stands on the sideline like a bump on a log, like a spectator looking up at the scoreboard to see what he should do next, like up on the Jumbotron. Oh, should I challenge? I don't know. And then that Bones Fossil moment when there's a penalty on the play and on the touchdown play, and Bones is tapping him on the shoulder saying, hey, we got a penalty. We can go from 1 yard for 2 points. And McCarthy looks around and says, 2. Go for 2. Like he's lost. Right. And we saw the game mismanagement. We saw what happened at Chargers. We saw what happened against Philly at home on that Monday night. We've seen it all year long. Yes. I don't trust him. So in the end, you say, what does he do? Well, what was my bright spot? In the end, and you started to call this at mid-year, all of a sudden, my offensive firepower team turned into a defensive team. And by the way, my defense, it wasn't ready to play on Sunday, but in the second half, it started to click and lock in. And what happened? It held San Francisco to 7 points in the second half. Well, how many times do we see the defense rise and shine at Patrick Mahomes and at least keep him in a game that they scored, 9 points in, right? 19-9. But they held Patrick to 19 points at home. So, again, they played inspired football. And I told you on that one Thursday night game, I got to see it at New Orleans, and I thought that was a dangerous game for my team. And Dan Quinn, because of COVID protocol, Mike McCarthy had to stay back in Frisco, Texas, watch it from his hotel room. Dan Quinn got to go down to the sidelines with his cap on backward and be the head coach. And it did my heart so much good because I saw, dare I say, life on the sideline. I saw energy. I saw enthusiasm. I saw butt slapping. I saw inspiration that I never felt from Mike McCarthy. That team is so deadheaded on the sideline, and all of a sudden Dan Quinn brought life. Because Dan Quinn has been a head coach in this league. And, Shannon, I know he only finished a game over 500 in Atlanta, but he was there for 5 years and 5 games before he got fired. And obviously, he got your hometown Falcons to a 28-3 lead over the GOAT in a Super Bowl at Houston. Well, that's pretty good, right? Okay, as we speak, who is the number 1 candidate in this country for an NFL head coaching job? I wish it were a black man, but it's not. It's Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn. Every job I see, every reporter I see, Dan Quinn's he's a candidate. Dan Quinn might be the primary candidate. Dan Quinn. It's like, what are there, 8 openings? I think he might be the primary candidate for all 8 openings. And I saw Adam Schefter say last night on ESPN, what's that?
Except Jacksonville.
Except Jacksonville. Yeah, because he turned. Well, I don't know if that will come back into play now. I have no idea. But you're probably right. But again, Adam Schefter is pointing out that, wait a second, Jerry Jones does not want to lose Dan Quinn. Obviously, Kellen Moore will be a candidate for some of the jobs, and he doesn't want to lose Kellen Moore either. But my point is, if he really doesn't want to lose Dan Quinn, I think there's going to be only one way to keep Dan Quinn, and that is to elevate him. Am I overreacting? Yeah. No, I saw the job he did with the defense. And Shannon, seriously, in the biggest picture, I know 11 from heaven fell into our laps in the draft, and you saw that coming first. But my point is, Mike McCarthy made one statement all year that I agreed with. Never in his career has he ever seen one side of the ball flipped through an offseason the way the Cowboys flipped their defense. They were arguably the worst defense in pro football a year ago. They finished second worst in yards rushing allowed. But my point to you is, didn't a lot of that have to do with just Dan Quinn's energy and his savvy and his enthusiasm and his brain? I don't know. He turned it around. It helped to have Micah. It helped to have this free agent and that free agent. But in the end, he flipped it on its head. And again, I think he could flip the whole team on its head. So if the window is closing, Jerry did not bless Mike McCarthy after that game. And by the way, as Jenny read Stephen Jones' quote on the radio show, his quote was, "I'm very confident that Mike will be back." Well, that was interesting to me because it sort of cracked the door open, like there will be discussion about this, but I'm very confident he will be back, as if it was still in play that we need to sit down and kick this around. Well, I think Jerry's going to really kick it around. Go ahead.
I think so too, Skip. I think for the simple fact of that, when you were 12-5 and you believe you are the better of the two teams that play, and the lesser team wins, obviously that's going to get floated around. But I think the thing is, Skip, and if you look at Dan Quinn and you look at Mike McCarthy, they're two totally different coaches. Dan Quinn is a rah-rah. He's very motivating. He's very, engaging, slapping guys, high-fiving guys, getting guys going. That's not what Mike McCarthy is. But see, Skip, when you got a Brett Favre, you got an Aaron Rodgers, you don't need to be that. You got two all-time greats that's going to go out there and play at an extremely high level. So he came in thinking like, this is who I am. Let me fold my arms. Let me let my lieutenants run the ship, and I just oversee everything. You ask, what does he do? What does he do? He doesn't strike you as a CEO, but how can you be a CEO, Skip, under Jerry Jones? You know Jerry micromanages everything. You know you only head coach in title only. Skip, Jerry Jones is telling you who's injured, when they're going to be back, and if they're going to play this week or the next. No, Skip, no owner, no general manager does that. He emasculates his head coach. Agreed. So how can somebody succeed in that role when Jerry constantly is overseeing and putting his thumb on his head?
Okay, at least Dan Quinn got to experience a taste of it this year, so it wouldn't be all new. At least he's established some rapport with how to manage Jerry, how to almost coach Jerry. And in the end, to me, Dan Quinn's got a little bit of Jimmy Johnson going, just a little bit. I don't want to overdo this, and I'm desperate. I admit you got me. I'm desperate, but there's a little bit of fire in him that I love that could inspire a whole football team. And yet he seems like he has enough charisma about him that he might be able to deal with Jerry enough to just sort of, keep him at arm's length. Maybe you got to once a week sit down and have a beer with him and eat some nachos. But in the end, again, if he just wants to hang out with Mike McCarthy, the ultimate puppet again, he'll go forward with this. But I'm telling you, the one statement Jerry made after that game, the score was not indicative of that game. That's all I needed to hear, because he never says something like that. He didn't want to hear about the controversial last play. He said it was irrelevant to him because he knew what we all knew, Dallas had no business even getting back in the game and having that maybe miracle shot that got robbed from them by that umpire. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But Jerry knew. Jerry was seething over what he did not see. He did not see energy or effort, or he didn't see a team that was prepared to make a run. You've been on those teams. You know what it looks like and what it feels like, and you couldn't see it. And you couldn't see it down the stretch of the season until that bogus, I told you it was fool's gold game at Philadelphia against the Eagles practice squad. That's the, come on, stop it. I don't want to see it anymore. I want to see Dan Quinn as my coach, because if the window is closing, give Dan Quinn a couple of years. I guarantee you he'll make a better run at it than Mike McCarthy will be able to.
But Skip, you and Jerry and you guys, you glossed over everything. The last 13 weeks of the season, you guys couldn't run the football. What happened Sunday? The 17-game regular season, you guys was the most penalized team in all of football. What happened Sunday? In 17 weeks, that was so herky-jerky. What happened Sunday? Okay. So everything, your season, came down to a microcosm. It was a microcosm. Game Sunday was a microcosm of your season. Skip, I said, Skip, I don't believe Mike McCarthy is the right guy. I said, I don't believe you're giving the quarterbacks, like you give Brady a lot of credit for Belichick's success, you gave Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre no credit for Mike McCarthy's success. And now he gets there and you see, he didn't all of a sudden just become unmotivating. He didn't all of a sudden just become what you see him is. That's what he's been. And you guys didn't see it, because I think the thing is, Skip, go ahead.
Okay, it's just the bottom line.
What's your bottom line?
All Jerry needs to know is that my team led the league in this category, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and one other category, penalties. That is poor coaching. You are a poorly coached football team, especially if you go into a playoff game and you set a franchise playoff record for penalties. That's all I need to know. Over and out. I've seen enough. I believe Jerry's seen enough, and he should have the guts as he approaches 80 years of age to pull the trigger. Do it. Dan Quinn is sitting in your lap. If you don't, he's going to be gone, and the defense is going to have to start over with the new coordinator.
And then Kellen, too. Everyone's interviewing him.
All those points you scored, all those yards you piled up. You got 17 points on Sunday. You had a little over 300. You had barely 300 yards on Sunday. What good is all of that if you can't get it done when you absolutely have to have it? Hey, thank you.
I agree.
So now you're coming around.
The Cowboys lost.
Empty calories.
Oh, and empty calories. We're throwing that in, Shannon.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here to get the latest from the show, and be sure to check out more of the best clips from Undisputed, or go watch a few other segments from our other shows on FS1.